Or two.
Oh, Patricia, when you get a chance.
Daryl just called me and said he didn't think you could hear anything.
I was telling
I
a
need
story about how
the
you
PowerPoint.
said,
The
that
PowerPoint.
means that you can start sitting on.
You don't know how happy we are.
I
We've had like 5 years of, 5 to 7 years where it's either been Dame or myself or Sharon on everything.
Every single thing.
It's just that nobody else has been
It was like being the token non-tenured person.
Yeah, exactly.
It's similar.
Yeah, I mean, they've lost staff, that's been hard.
Yeah.
I was saying,
Yeah,
Dave,
yeah.
I emailed Chantal and Dave emailed back. Well, that's great knowing I'll never have to work again. I said, I think you should bring Six Pack to the next faculty meeting. Celebrate. I will try and, if everyone's going to be going this Friday, I'll try and, I just feel like our river trip is probably going to. I'm so not looking forward to this.
Hopefully it'll be
Lewis,
good weather.
Well, the weather's
That's
not
what I
going to be
was
warm and
thinking about
cold,
it.
but
That's
it'll be
great.
warmer
I just
down there than
oh,
it
I
is up
see.
here.
So
And
it's-
Tony was supposed to be
need
our
to,
safety paddler, but he's had to pull out for Vandal Friday.
No, how
So we
to-
don't necessarily need one. I'm going to have Lisa drive as a safety driver, but I still am trying to recruit a few of our route guiding students. Down in Lewiston, on a section of Clearwater, above Hog Island. So it's really flat and it's very low, but it's just very cold.
Yeah. You don't want anything to happen.
Everyone has had to rent like wetsuits and booties. And I can't wait to share the photos of the wreck canoes and how they're restored. We went last night to check out the gear, and 3 of them had been stored right side up. So they were full of putrid water.
No.
And so I was like dark. Students were like, oh, what do we do? I'm like, we're going to have to bail them out. So we spent like half an hour and they're like, I bet my shoes are getting wet. I was like, well, this is the reality, people. So,
Yeah, that's terrible.
yeah, so we got to do some loading.
Huh?
Yeah, I can't find the
Matt?
trailer
Oh.
for the.
Yes.
I looked in between.
He's in the car, actually.
But I'm not surprised because that
I'm
was
saying at
that
George's
gate is totally open.
that now I realize what.
I went in at night and I thought I would have.
I thought she
it was
needed
open
a
and the
drink,
canoes
so
were-
I gave her a
they were
drink, and
not
then
only rights up,
it
but
was
they
the
also
weather.
weren't in the trailer locked up.
But
like they normally are.
Georgia,
So I don't know who was last
Georgia
using my
lost her
STM.
dad last week, and then
She doesn't know, but
but she told me because
anyway, it
planning
was
to
just
come
kind of
to
funny. I was like, this is a very good learning experience for you
I
guys.
need some
I
time
was
to
kind of
the
education.
house.
Yeah.
Because last time
Like,
she
you will
came
never
down,
start
she and
canoe,
Peggy
right?
didn't get along very well.
Yeah, you will never forget it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Peggy
So
bit
this is
her
why we
ear.
always check our gear before, like 2 days more in advance. I knew there was gonna be.
All
I didn't know
right, I'm
that.
gonna pull up. Hey, Marcy, are you with us?
So anyway.
Yeah, can you guys hear me? Yep. You probably cannot see the PowerPoint, can you? Behind me.
Geocaching.
Can
Huh?
you? Can you see the PowerPoint?
Oh,
No, all I can see is your guys' table. I can't see anything above you.
What's up?
What?
I can't see the screen that's behind you. I just see the table.
Do you see us?
Yes. I see it,
Okay.
but just
Oh,
you tell me your net.
Isn't
So
it?
if we angle it?
This is
You're gonna, but you have the PowerPoint. So
Yeah,
why
I
don't
do.
you just
Is that
follow
better?
the PowerPoint?
It is.
Maybe follow the PowerPoint from your computer. Because can you
ask
see
if
it though enough now?
Yeah, I can see it, and I do have it up on my computer, so I'll follow along here.
Hi, Marcy. Great.
Hi.
Sorry, gang.
So is there nobody else coming? Would you like to join us at the table?
Dana's not coming? Neither of the Deans?
Damon?
I'm not even going there.
Presenting to ourselves.
So why don't we just have fun?
Yeah, I mean, why don't we just discuss?
Hey, I vote for that.
And it's like, you know, I don't mind disseminating, but we had like 3
Oh,
days
I'm
ago.
sorry. Someone. Oh, Michael Crow. Thank you,
night.
Michael.
Hi, everybody.
Yay. So I guess we have to be serious now. Michael Michael Cook.
Are you kidding me? I'm the most unserious person in the world. I'll be bored if you're too serious.
So I go and ask the dares. They're fine. It's their grant, right? So we're just sending into the grant givers.
Sounds good.
That's what she said. Say one of the
You are way bolder than I am.
She is. I
I
am.
am
tenure, I
very
have nothing to
pretty.
lose.
I guess maybe you and I could probably go now, right? Although I was warned that it will not take effect until.
Congratulations.
Thank
Emma.
you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Oh, all of your
So a
support.
lot of you found out all at the same time. Or
Yeah,
y'all found out at the same time.
basically, I mean.
I think
Similar
they got
day.
the letters yesterday.
Oh,
Nice.
Yeah. So, yeah, but I wasn't. It was funny because I really wasn't expecting it yesterday because everyone said it's the end of the month, and so when Paul called me and he said I have this letter in my hand. I'm like, oh crap, I'm in trouble. I did something wrong.
They like to do that. So sadistic.
I know.
It is.
Okay, we have at least one dean attending. I said it's optional if you want to know how you want to use it, it's fine, but this is the venue.
Who's that?
Corey.
I thought I saw Damon earlier.
I
He
saw
was
Damon in
with
the
us.
hall. I assumed he was
Well,
coming
I
in.
just said we're kind of just, I mean,
He said
made
he
much
had
more
another
sense,
meeting.
so.
Yeah.
Well, Michael Cruz is there.
That's true.
He is
Hello,
also a representative. Welcome.
We made space for you.
Shut
We made a chair here.
Oh, yeah.
Those are
Is
overserved.
there an automatic? Does this page up? No. Page down? No. Okay. Well, I'll just do it manually.
So I can't really read that screen, so I'm just gonna listen.
Okay.
Okay.
Can't they zoom in on that screen?
Can we focus in? Yeah. Is there a way
Yeah,
to-
Michael, can you adjust your focus?
But can we?
Don't think so.
Okay,
I think it's
okay.
gotta come. I think it's gotta come from you guys if it
Can
gets
you
close
zoom in?
up.
That's what
We can't zoom into the.
There should be a way.
Yeah, we can, I think we can zoom in on the screen. But you won't be able, you'll miss looking at us.
Don't worry about
That's
it.
perfectly right.
I'm seeing Mike tomorrow.
Yeah, it can be a win-win.
Plus, minus, maybe? I don't know.
Could have recruited some students, maybe. Extra credit for
They were dashing into.
So, Michael, is that doing anything?
No, but that's okay. That's okay. I can follow along. I'll listen.
There's
It's-
either a cobweb or funny hair.
It's gotta be on the.
Yeah.
You can send me the slides later if you want.
Okay, okay.
You know, I can send them to you.
Okay.
Do you have a computer? Let me send them to you.
I have my little iPad right here.
Okay. Okay, you guys are gonna look at my email. Just don't get horrified with the amount of email that I get a day.
I might find it comforting.
That you aren't the only one.
Welcome back, Susan.
Thank you.
What'd you get?
Oh. Have you?
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's all right, Jim's been out of town.
Oh, have you?
No, just, I love it anyway.
Oh,
Oh
right.
my gosh.
Hey, what did you ever end up doing with the Fiji? Remember we chatted about the Fiji trip over break? Was it break? Yeah.
All right.
You went.
Should be coming to you.
Nice.
Okay.
Why is it moving like that?
Is it bothering you?
Actually, now I can see it a little better.
Switch it.
No, oh, the hair. Would in a different life, but it's good. My OCD is under control.
Right.
Maybe. Although now it is coming up,
That
so
works well.
I can see it now. Now I can see it.
okay.
Alright.
That's insane.
Cool.
Ah, now it's working.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go.
All right, let's go. Thank you all for being here and supporting us and coming to our talk about interdisciplinary work, opportunities, and challenges. I think this came as a kind of nice little piece of the work that we did. We originally proposed a project, a STEM integration with healthy lifestyles or healthy active lifestyles project, which really became kind of a focus on doing the interdisciplinary work, which really I think is a big piece of what came out of this. I'd like to introduce my team, and maybe we can just go around. It's a small group, but could we just make some quick introductions? Why don't we just go around the room? Linda.
Linda Taylor, Counseling School Psychology.
I'm Helen Brown, I'm Exercise Science and Health.
Grace Gutscart, physical education, teacher education.
And current STEM education.
Susan McKenzie, Recreation.
Julie Steinreck.
Jim Gregson.
Associate Dean. Michael.
You gotta
Michael Croth, AOLL here in Boise. Glad to be here.
And chair of the GRPC.
That's right. And last but not least, our graduate student, and Court Lane, who is also on the project team.
Yep. Hi, my name's Marcy Galbraith, and I'm one of advanced doctoral students.
And was a big implementer of this project. Okay. I hope I know how to use this.
So I think that it's probably noteworthy that we know that this is being recorded.
Oh, I'll make sure I speak eloquently though.
Okay.
You gotta make sure that I'm situated.
Articulate myself.
Okay.
Or sit up straight.
Sorry. Yeah.
Good thing they're flashing on the PowerPoint versus us, right? So just wanted to highlight, and I totally forgot, I have extra T-shirts for our funders or our supporters, and I forgot them in my desk in my office, but I will get them for you. We have some very nice, and you will see some pictures of them. But this is our logo. The name of the project was Paddle and Bike the Coeur d'Alene Watershed. So let me give you some context with why we chose this. I hope it's not cut off for you guys, but Coeur d'Alene has some really significant issues, both sociologically, but also environmentally. In the 1980s, the bottom third of Lake Coeur d'Alene was given to the CDA tribe to manage and restore. If you go back in history, you will understand it's a very tumultuous history, but we're going with, where it is now. In 1983, the Coeur d'Alene Lake was actually placed on the national priorities list as the third most hazardous EPA Superfund site due to the mining and the tailings that came from the mining industry in Kellogg, Idaho, which incidentally was bought back from the tribe in the 1800s for $5 an acre because the tribe was anointed this land as their reservation land. And because the U.S. government deemed to the tribe that, well, your agriculture, and you're not going to be doing this kind of industrialization, so we want to buy back the land that we anointed you as part of this allotment, and we'll buy it back for $5 an acre. And that has continued to reap huge benefits from that purchase, but then in the meantime, contaminated all the land subsequent to that was owned by the tribe. So it's really a very interesting history from an environmental and political stance. From some more demographic information, over 40 residents on the, 40%, my percent side went away, of residents on this reservation are living below 200% of the federal poverty level. They're like 200% below what is actually supposed to be poverty, which is amazing. In Benawha County, which is where the res is, the 40th of the 42 counties of the lowest poverty rate and highest incidence of crime. There are major drug and alcohol problems among the youth, with just some numbers, over 350 juvenile law-related offenses per year. They also show very high incidence of diabetes, obesity, and other health-related issues. And I think Helen might have more statistics at some time. So let me just move into the research. A lot of this we put together as a research plan to really look at improving and increasing a sense of stewardship for self-community and place among youth in the Coeur d'Alene Reservation. Coeur d'Alene, along with other Indian reservations in this area, have come up with 4 pillars for their community: guardianship, stewardship, membership, and scholarship. One of the things that they are really working towards is sovereignty, ensuring their ability to legislate and take care of their land, and they're very concerned because they have an over almost 60% dropout rate, and they're really worried that they're not going to have students to be able, or youth to be able to take over that leadership of their communities. So in that main goal of the research, we broke that down into 4 research questions. And I think what we'll do is, as we move along, we'll highlight those. You have PowerPoints, Linda, I can make that available to you as well. But we'll go through and we'll actually touch on all of them within our presentation. Is that all right? Okay, I'm going to turn this over to Marcy, as Marcy was the main brave soul who was there every day for 2 weeks on the Coeur d'Alene reservations with everywhere from 11 to 8 kids every day. She rode 60 miles a day. She hiked, she paddled. This year, we're going to be doing this with another grant project I had, and she told me she's actually joined a gym so that she will get in shape before that weekend, so it's that week, so it's not so strenuous. So thanks, Marcy. If you wouldn't mind taking it away, and let me know when I can move to the next slide.
All right, excellent. And let me just follow up with what Ann said. I did join a gym because we rode up to 23 miles in one day, and that day, almost killed me. So since we're going to have recreation as part of what we're doing, and we are going to have the kids in the field, which is great because I'm an environmental educator, but I decided that maybe it was time to make sure that, I wasn't bringing up the tail end of the kiddos. So I'm going to talk a little bit about it. Ann said we did do this over 2 weeks, from August 20th to August 30th, 4 days each week. I was there with the kids every day. It was great. We had 8 kids who were consistently there every day, a few others that came and went. We had such a variety of what we did between the recreation activities and the STEM activities that we were able to engage and catch all of the kids. Some of the kids were really drawn, as far as STEM activities, to the water quality testing we were doing. Some of them were really drawn to the native plant pieces that we were doing. And some of them just really got engaged with the technology, whether it was using the GPS and the iPads out in the field, or going back to the computer lab we set up and working with the data and creating digital field journals. So there were points when everybody was excited about something we were doing. Also with the recreation activities, some of the kids really enjoyed the biking that we did the first week, and they were biking every day. And then the second week we spent most of the days paddling out on canoes. And so you can see a picture of that up there. So the kids were launching into the water. Some of them were really drawn to that. And then we also spent a day hiking. And some of them were really into the trail we went. And it was interesting to see that some of them had never been out paddling on the lake or hiking on these trails. So there was something for everybody. And you can go ahead and move to the next slide. One of the things that was also interesting is that experts came in, but they were some of our community partners. And so they were people that the kids knew. They knew from their community. And when they came in and gave presentations, the kids were really engaged in a way that was different than the engagement that we had with them. So that was interesting to watch, and especially with the native plants. Some of them were introduced to native foods that they just don't eat anymore, and they don't go out with their families and gather huckleberries and things like that anymore. So it was their first exposure to them, and they really made a connection as it was coming from community members that they knew and recognized. So that was interesting to watch, and it was really good to have the community partners participating with us. It gave a whole different level. They were engaged in everything from the trip to the grocery store. They had a trip to the grocery store that Helen may talk a little about, but the kids did a scavenger hunt there, and they looked at food and they read labels, and all of the kids were into that. They thought that was great. So we really had a nice variety of activities between the recreation and the STEM. We were able to catch and engage all of the kids, and using community partners was really beneficial.
Can I point out that was not part of the food? That was something that the kids pulled up
That's
from the
why I
lake.
tried to do, native foods, identification of native and invasive plants, and then engineering feet
I think that
and.
ended up on someone's head. I'm pretty sure.
I'm guessing the things that are being pulled out of that water right now are contaminated.
Yeah.
Hopefully we're not tasting that.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I do need to add, all students are tribal youth from the Coeur d'Alene Reservation. That was the kind of, I wouldn't want to say requirement, but they were all recruited from the tribe, and they were recommended by either an elder or a community member. So that added a whole different feature, and I think what Marcy had said was important to note. Some of them have never been to many of these areas of significance to their tribe, and that was another impetus for doing this particular project. They've lived there for up to 13 years, and they've not been hiking or ever been able to have the, look at all the foods. And what was interesting is they were very interested. They were very engaged. It wasn't, it wasn't a sense of, I don't want to know about that. It was all of a sudden this identity building activity for them that really attached them to not only the place, but, the recreation, the STEM, as well as, the nutritional value of things that their elders did. So
Yeah, that was really surprising to me. That's how many had never been canoeing and had no idea. But would say they'd come back with their families. So yeah, I thought it was really
So I'm going to just kind of move. What we did is we broke this up because we had basically 4 projects going on in one. And so each of us will present a little bit about our project. But again, I'd like to highlight what we said at the beginning. Our very 4th question about interdisciplinary work and how do experts collaborate with each other was huge. And I'd like to thank Grace for pursuing all of that. It wasn't easy because with very busy people, you can only imagine. So our research question, at least for the STEM learning, was really to focus on this sense of stewardship because, again, the tribe has designated stewardship, guardianship, membership, and scholarship as key pillars for their youth and educational purposes. And then to, ultimately what they'd like is each tribe has a Department of Natural Resources. And their departments of natural resources are sometimes 2,000 people big, and the tribe might only be 1,500. But if you look at the kind of the demographics, people who make over $30,000 or more in the tribe, they're about 10% Native. Those who are hourly, it's about 80% Native, and they'd like to change that. And one of the things, just from research methods that we utilize were STEM attitude surveys, questions like STEM and science and math will help me in the future. That's just an example. Water quality questionnaires, how good or clean is the quality of water in Lake Coeur d'Alene, and how do you know? And then we also had them do some mapping of their place. And it's interesting for when these kids or youth started those pictures, and I wasn't able to capture the pictures, but you'll see they could identify where the red box and the zips were. Nothing else. And then at the end, they identified places like Indian Hills, Hangman Creek, and some of these that were very significant to the tribe. So I thought that was interesting. Again, we're kind of going through this fairly quickly, but just some things that were highlighted as far as the STEM learning. We really wanted to engage students in what we're calling culturally rich, place-based, hands-on education. We've been taken to task recently by our tribal members. Are you really teaching culture? I don't think you can teach our culture. And I don't even think I can. You know, the natives would say, I don't even think I can. Because culture is very much instantiated in the family. So we've kind of come to a term, indigenous knowledge, but we're still kind of trying to fit that around how we work. Tribal members and partners, again, gave these talks, so we really engaged them as experts. We walked through the water quality data, and they participated in the statewide IDA H2O program, which it actually allowed them to feel like they were bigger than just collecting the data, that they were able to see this on a statewide level and see how really, for lack of better words, dirty their lake is, how much, you know, how severely it has been impacted.
And how dirty is it? I think it's dirty.
As long as you keep the stuff on the bottom and you don't stir it up, you're okay. It's all on the bottom. So, you know, Hagedorn's proposal of bringing in big ships is probably not going to go over well because they dredge the bottom. So a lot of the problems are heavy metals that right now sit in the bottom, and because of the debris and so forth, it's in an oxygen-rich environment, which is actually ionizing those things and kind of making it not so toxic, I guess. But
so, what about the quality of fish that are caught there?
Well, when they can catch fish, because you know, because of the dams and so forth, there really is no more edible fish that are coming in. But they're seeing a lot of fish with high levels of mercury and lead. So you probably don't want to eat it. is really the bottom line. So it is a problem. And someone had told me the other day, if you take all the Indian tribes in the Northwest area, there are billions of dollars being spent on restoration projects to bring the fish back. But one thing to keep in mind, nobody has eaten fish because one, especially on the tribes, because it's so expensive, right? None of the youth have really eaten fish in years, in decades, in centuries. So how is that going to impact when the fish come back? Will they actually have a taste for it? Will they? Because right now it's served as a delicacy. And so how will that be ingrained or introduced back into the food source and so forth? And that's something that I think Helen needs to work on. Because from a nutritional standpoint, it's important. So, questions? Oh, sorry. So just a couple of quick student quotes on various questions that we asked. You know, one of the students said, even if the water looks clear, there are other ways that it may not be clean. And that was sort of a key idea. And I thought this one was actually kind of interesting. We could still swim in the lake when the test shows there are some chemicals in it. So what that, for me, was kind of highlighting the realizing that it is more than two H's and one O, right? Two hydrogens and one oxygen. That there's all these other things that contribute to the quality of the lake and the ecosystem of the lake to allow fish to live, allow people to, enjoy and so forth. So that's kind of interesting to me. And then one of the others that I really felt was important, a student who was not, I wouldn't say she's an outsider, but she really hadn't been as much through her family introduced to being native, right? As much of the others, but she said the lake is important to the tribe because it is their home and food source. And for her, that was a big aha, and she drew that on her map, and it was kind of interesting. So I'm going to leave that, if that's okay. Please, again, I think it can be informal enough so that you can ask questions and so forth as we go on. But as I said, this is a big project. So, Helen, I think you're up next. So here, if you want this.
Because I can't talk sitting down. So,
Orator.
no, I just can't. I'm sorry. No apologies needed. I just need to stand. So when we went into this project, what was interesting about it, the physical activity connection seemed really obvious to me. That you could do this STEM-based education, you could be active, and that's related to health. But I was really interested in making some connections about health related to food and beverages. And I've worked on reservations before, both urban and rural, so I have a pretty good understanding of traditional food habits. Of course, they change for different groups. But it was really a challenge to think about it. And then I started thinking about food and health is really a system. I mean, there's an ecology to nutrition. It's, I think, the reason I really like it. And I know enough about water quality because my husband was an ecologist. And spent a lot of time talking to Anne about, so tell me what you'll be studying. And so Anne would say, well, we're going to talk about erosion. And I said, oh, that really sounds like the way our capillaries become occluded and then it leads to stroke. Or, so she and I spent some time just talking about, it was fun, talking about what they'd be studying in the field and how I could find a parallel in nutrition. So we're talking about solute levels of the lake. I could think about blood sugar. I mean, those are really common, and the kidneys is being filtered. So there were really common ways to think about this. So that was really that's kind of the path that I took in thinking about how to integrate an interest in their food and an interest with this project. And it's not always easy because I think nutrition is sort of like going to the dentist. Nobody really wants to go, nobody really wants to hear what the dentist has to say.
We all want those potato chips.
Right, and so going to the nutritionist is similar. It's the big scold. I always call it public health the big scold. You have to be careful about that. So I tried to do something really different. And so this was the question, but let's go on and I'll show you what I tried to do. So the first thing I tried to do was really structure some nutrition and health lessons. Go ahead, Ann. And I really wanted them to be standard-based, and I used, I figured the STEM standards were being presented, so I wasn't as concerned about that. I was integrating nutrition and health standards integrating the lessons with health standards. They're largely overlooked in most of our K through 12 education. We don't have a test about health education. We have standards, but not necessarily are they followed or definitely not reported. So that was important to me to prepare standard-based lessons that could be integrated with a daily watershed lesson. So that was my goal, talking to Anne and later when Marcy came on about what will you be doing today and how can I choreograph what I want, some topics that are really important about nutrition around the lesson. Okay. And the second structure is that, there was a lot of technology involved, and I knew the kids would have iPads, so I was really looking for everything. I was trying to get away from as much paper as I could, but engage them because, as we all saw, they were very engaged with their iPads. It was sometimes hard to get them to do other things because they were so engaged with their iPads. But so the couple mornings I was able to be there, the pre-field experience, the lessons that I have in nutrition were integrated. Either they were quizzes or there was some fun interactive thing that we did, like we looked at sodium levels in food, or they took a little quiz on how healthy am I. But I tried to keep it really computer-based so they'd have fun. I mean, that would be part of the lesson. And also knowing that these things are available online. You can learn a lot about your health and assess your health online. Then during the watershed, there were times to stop and have the lesson. And then following it, the field experience, I called it Care for Self because we were really talking about care for the environment and care for the watershed. So it was the journal reflection about care for self. And there weren't as many reflections as I would hope. There were probably 3 days of reflections, but I felt like there was some interesting feedback. Okay, so here's an example, and I know it's impossible to read from here, but I just wanted you to see what I did. We actually had a student who has worked with Grace and I a lot in design from here. She now works at Lighthouse Salad Dressings, but Amber Sert did the logo for us, and I really love it. She did several iterations until we got there, but she does all of our Safe Routes to School work, and really, her work's great. So you can see on the side, I really tried to follow kind of the standard lesson plan, time required, supplies needed, the Idaho Health Education Standards, and then objectives for each lesson. So this was week 1, day 2 biochemical assessment of the water, and I'm talking about we need to look at the chemistry of water, and then I just want to give you an example of how my thinking was, the way there's a chemistry of the water, our body's chemistry. And so we were thinking about the chemistry of our blood and we were looking at what could I tell about what blood test would help me understand my chemistry and my health. So we're talking about diabetes, cholesterol, triglycerides. And so just helping them understand that this is within your reach. The same way you're testing water and learning, you can really learn about your body. That was my goal. And so then what I did, because I wasn't always there, is to give just talking points. This was really, 5 to 10 minutes of a just stop mini lesson. We're testing water, and we can talk about our blood, our body's biochemistry at the same time. And so I gave a little short lesson, and then just some questions. What do you do to check up on your health? Look up 3 of your favorite foods, using the iPad again. So I was just trying to make it really integrated with what they were doing in the water. And then the next slide is an example of reflection. So again, this preamble, this is in their little books. The watershed's made up of many systems. We have a system, heart, muscle, blood. We look at the physical environment. And my point here was we use physical observations to learn about our environment, but we can use physical observations. We can observe how we feel and notice how we eat and how we move. And I think for adolescents, that's something that we don't think a lot about. How do I feel? How do I feel about my body? How do I feel about my food? And so this was to just get them thinking, how do you feel about your health? How would you like to care for your health? How do you plan to care for your health? So I was just trying to see. And then next slide, some of their responses. I thought they were interesting. How do you feel about your health? Really, there was only one that said, I feel really good about my health.
So Helen, were these youth obese, or some of them?
Oh,
Some of them were.
Yeah, there were definitely, I would say, I'm sort of a BMI. I mean, I've done so much weight and measuring of people. Half would have at least been overweight, half at least. There were a couple thin ones.
Okay.
And then one, I love this, I feel good except a little bit fluffy. That was a very heavy boy. And I thought, what an interesting word. It's a really soft word. And so, but then you get back to the whole body image and culture, and it's just different.
Yeah. We have, actually, I think that was the boy that, when we were doing the canoe rescues, it was a big mission when we were, getting them out of the canoes.
He's a large boy. Yeah.
Interesting things about it.
But for a 13-year-old to not feel great about their health, I thought that, that was interesting. And then the next was, how would you like to care for your health right now? And I love this one. I would like that. I mean, that's not the response that I would have expected from this question, but I thought it was really, really sweet. I would like to care for my health. And most of them really got that I need to eat right, I need to exercise. And then the next one, how do you plan to care for your health? Exercising and good food, eat right, eat better, swim, bike, run. I mean, I think that kind of swim, bike, run came from this project. So that was.
And just to kind of add on to that, and I think maybe Susan and Julie are going to talk a little bit more about that, but anecdotally, I will say, because I rode and did some of that with them, there was a lot of complaining. Just what was interesting at the end, it was this, I did it. I actually did it. And that was a sense of pride, and I can do it. It's not like, but yeah, there was just a lot of complaining, but afterwards it was, I did it, and it didn't kill me. I'm still vertical, and I thought that was huge.
And then the other thing that we did, next slide in, please. There was a kind of question of the day, and we as a team alternated talking about, and I'm trying to remember exactly how we did this, but we sort of had leading questions and different components took the lead on what that question of the day was. So this question was, our choices impact the health of the watershed. How do our choices impact the health of our bodies? So once again, trying to integrate this. Has some really interesting responses, I thought. I didn't know that the food you can eat can impact your body like grease. And this is really what they said, can do that too. I mean, I just wrote exactly what they said. To care what we eat is smart. And I thought, wow, it's interesting. Here's a kid just going, I never connected that. I didn't know that. Next. I love this one. We're the ones that direct our health.
Okay.
Yeah. And this is a really wonderful one too thing. Our choices also impact the health of our bodies. Is that you can get, I really did literally what they said, is that you can get fat if you eat too much sugar, you also get fat if you eat too much sugar. So this connection, I mean, that's what I was hoping what they thought. Okay.
There are so many incredible connections between watershed and modern.
I know.
Bodies and modern.
Yeah, I
It
never-
really is.
No, I got very excited about it, thinking about, I mean, I'd like to do some more work with it, because it's such a better way to talk about health and nutrition, because it's just a different
It
way.
is.
I never put that together as a good analogy.
Yeah,
You
the,
know?
the
It's
idea
all the
of
system.
like
Yeah.
water
Uh-huh.
gets clean if it runs, you know, if it's moving a lot and running over, you know, that whole idea of your body getting clean, it's like you're moving
Right.
through it. And
We could just go on and on, couldn't we?
could.
Right, I know we could go on and on,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
really a fun.
And then the
play.
next was, another question was, how does a healthy watershed help ensure you're healthy? And how does it help your community? I love this line, and this is actually the boy that was fluffy, said this. But I love his last, the healthy watershed needs more help, and I think that was wonderful. I think he really got it, that health in a kind of a comprehensive way, a global way, that connection that we were hoping to see. Okay. And then before I talk about this, just really briefly, we had a survey and the results, I didn't try to do anything with the numbers because we had kind of pre-post mismatches and, but
We
I
had
would.
such few kids.
And we had such few
over
kids,
all.
but a couple things I would say about it. Overall, not, most of them at least were sort of on the neutral to low side of I know what to eat. But what I thought was most important, at the end of the trip, at the end of the 2 weeks, we asked, are you interested in learning more? Or do you, how important is this to your health? I felt like most of the responses were on 1 to 5 scale. We're above 3. And so I felt like, I mean, sometimes it's easy to get discouraged in these things because there's not very many students and you don't have that many results. But I felt as I looked back through it, I thought, I think that people started thinking, and that's the important thing. This is, the pictures that we took on the scavenger hunt weren't, I don't know why, I can't, they didn't come off the iPads, but I have continued to do this environmental monitoring work in Coeur d'Alene, so I wanted to show you a couple pictures. This is really what they're faced with. And in a subsequent grant from Blue Cross, I've done environmental measures of all the stores and all the grocery stores, and even been in the casino several times. And really, the kids are saying this too on their survey. The health of the food available is a concern. The healthy food access is, and those are kind of two different things. Knowing what food's good for them, and they all mentioned drinking water because we talked a lot about energy, because I kept wanting to buy energy drinks. So, but it's really what they're faced with.
It's like being on a road trip when you stop at the petrol station. That's literally how I feel. What's the least bad option in here?
Right.
And that's the biggest problems, I think, on tribes, the true tribes that or tribal communities I work with. They have these, I mean, the heated food that they have is usually greasy chicken or something. They don't, and the problem is that in order to have a shop on the tribe, you have to go through tribal council. And people have talked about, well, could we have a cafe or a coffee shop? And that has to be, like I said, vetted through tribal council. And tribal council is not really on board with that because that doesn't really make much money. This makes a lot of
It's
money.
like schools and vending machines.
Yeah.
Well, let's go to the next slide, and then I'll be done. I want to say a couple more things. So what we did with the scavenger hunt, which I'm sorry I don't have a picture for because it was really a blast. I had a list of scavenger hunt, and it was said something like a couple things that they wrote because I couldn't figure out how to take a picture of the iPad and write over the photo at the same time, so I need to learn how to do that. But we said, what's the first thing you see? And they were writing like, we see chips, we see beer. But then I said, find your favorite vegetable. And they were hysterical because they'd run to the vegetables and take pictures. Because I said, let's document it. Find your favorite fruit. Find the lowest sodium soup, the highest sodium soup. So we did a big hunt all over the store. And so that was a way more informational and fun way to do food label. Because then they wanted to know how to read the food labels. And so I said, oh, well, let me help you. Because nobody really wants a food label lesson until they need one. So I'll end by saying what this is really, I had funding for the Nutrition Environmental Measures Project before. Once we did this, I'm doing it with the One Sky Winner Food Coalition. But what's happening with that is the same kids that we work with at Bike Paddle are inventorying food up there now. In fact, we're actually going, Iris Mace, who's been wonderful with UI Extension, is working with the kids on a basis, so it's easier for her to do than me. They're going into the school store and doing measures of what's available, which is, I think, great, because they're going to document that. So they're doing a documentation of the food, and we'll be doing kind of a photojournalism of the food that the kids are documenting. So this is ongoing, and I have to leave with one little story that's been great news. There's a new tribal manager at the grocery store, and called to let us know that there's new management, wanted to know if I'd come back and share our documentation results, and he said, we want to change the store. We want it to be different. We want it to be healthy. So on April 1st, I'm going back with our results and talking about strategies for really making store improvements. So yeah, I'm really excited about that. And I feel like the momentum for healthier food on the reservation is just growing and growing and growing. So, but anyway, thanks.
Very cool. I have to leave, but it's exciting work, so I'm just excited about what's come from it. And then there was a larger grant that, we used some of this data to
Right.
get it to the.
Right.
So, which is fabulous as well. And it's really fun to see people working.
So Susan and I, the approach that we took to this was that we really wanted to have the focus of the recreation be on using the outdoors as a learning laboratory, so that we would try to identify the outdoors and outdoor activities as a way to engage students in learning about STEM. So that was really, I think, like the impetus for. I came late onto the project, but we talked about this way before the project
STEM
was
and
even.
physical activity.
Yeah, the connection between the two. So that was kind of an approach that I think that we had to it. The PDW team chose canoeing, biking, and hiking as those outdoor physical activities to kind of facilitate not only what they were doing once they were out on the watershed, but actually to get to it. Because a lot of times you could drive, you could find other modes of, transportation, boat, versus actually using their own physical ability to navigate and be able to get to the locations. So that was something I think that was a goal. So we were interested from a recreation standpoint, we were interested in what ways the physical activities in the program were more enjoyable than other ways of exercising for them. So as they went through the couple of weeks of doing canoeing and hiking and biking, we asked them what were those things. And these are the things that came up. Friendship, challenge, relaxation, and fun. Those were the unique things that were not equated with exercising, but rather recreation, rather leisure, rather that kind of positive viewpoint of what physical activity can be. And so some quotes, the biking makes it fun because as you're biking, you can relax and listen to the nature. The best part of biking was the chilling with friends. We get to meet new people. I like the biking because it was fun and hard and because everyone pushed me to do it. The physical activities in the program are different than exercising in that you have fun and do things at your own pace and you can be with your friends. So all of those kind of positive associations that we want students to have with being physically active, and then melding that with the education, the STEM learning, technology, even learning on the, on the lake. So that was cool. We also asked students what the most engaging activities were during the program. And it was I didn't put the full description from the journal, but when did they lose track of time or have the most fun? They said canoeing and bike riding were the most often mentioned. The canoeing was so fun, but so long. That's how they talk. So long. I remember the boy who said it. The bike ride was the most engaging of all. I liked the canoeing because I got some exercise. And so what was interesting is in I did a little mini session with them, like a focus group at the very end, the last day. And I said, what did you guys like the most? And so this was separate. This was a journaling thing. But then separately, they corroborated the results, and they said, canoeing, because we got to tip, we got to have fun, we got to play in the water. But biking, even though it was hard, it made my butt hurt, like literally. When it made my butt hurt.
I know what that was.
But, they said, but the biking was challenging. and they were surprised they were able to do it going up the long hill. They kept mentioning the long hill that they had to go up. So they groaned a lot while they had to do it, but in the end, they saw a value to doing it, just like you were saying earlier, Anne. I think that self-efficacy, or rather self-confidence, that they garnered through the activities was a key piece that we found out.
And I need to just add to it, we were able, one little boy, I don't know if you remember, anyway, he talked about riding bikes, and that he really wanted a bike, that he really thought that this would be something that would be important for him, and we were able to, one of our staff or faculty up in Coeur d'Alene was able to actually find a bike for him, and we brought it down to him, and he tells us, he emails me every so often to tell me how much he rode that day. So it was kind of cool.
That's nice. That's really
Yeah, and I'll just throw in there too that when they talk about this really long hill, you can't imagine it unless you're there. But when you think really long, it was 7 miles uphill. So 7 miles is a really long hill, and that's what they were referring to.
I agree with that.
So I
missed
like
that
going to
part.
Pullman to go.
Yeah, exactly. But going uphill.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you think about it, it really is that long.
And for many of these kids, they're not that active.
No.
And that's the other problem, that there's just not the encouragement to do that.
And so one of the things that was interesting is we purposefully worded the question to say most engaging activities, so that it would be very broad-based and it wasn't just on physical activity. And they mentioned physical activities. So there's something with physical activity. One mentioned doing the testing in the water, but there's something with the physical activity that because I think of the way that it was implemented, that they saw a lot of value in it and could appreciate, even though it was difficult and challenging.
And they did it together, and I think your
Yeah, the
previous,
social.
like the friends, and I got to chill. We were all doing it. It wasn't like any of us were opting out. I mean, the adults were doing it. All of us were doing it, and so then it felt not like work anymore.
And I think just from being on the water, I'm actually surprised to hear this, because when they came out canoeing, they had already done the biking. And I heard a lot of grumbling about the biking. And they were like, so the feedback I got on the ground was that they were enjoying the canoeing a lot more than the
They
biking.
enjoyed the canoeing
So
too.
I'm
Yeah, it was
really
fun.
surprised to see that, but that's great.
And they actually had banter in the
Yeah.
focus group that was some of them saying, "Oh no, I hated the biking," and others said, "You just hated it because because I beat you up the hill," and then the other one says, "I love the canoeing because we kind of tip each other," and so they were going back and forth, and so they were definitely demonstrating that both were valued.
Yeah.
And actually, the tipping part was interesting because they told me afterwards, they go, "Man, my muscles hurt."
Yeah.
So they didn't realize
Yeah.
that they were working out
Yeah.
in that kind of fun
Yeah.
way. And it was like, if they could find ways to do that more, they would do it more. They would do, they'd work out more, that kind of thing.
That was one thing too about with the canoeing that, a lot of them commented on, and I don't know if it was in Bigger Data Set that knew, just, people saying they hadn't done it before, they'd want to come back and do it with their families, and tipping, and, at first a lot of them like, I don't want to tip in the lake, or, there's this, and then after we'd done it, they wanted to do it again. and, and it was also team, there was team building, and we had some races and some competitions, so I think it was really valuable. And the other thing I wanted to comment on that we haven't really put into the PowerPoint, but I just want to make an anecdotal comment. I didn't collect data from my graduate students, but we were able to engage my grad students who are doing a leadership programming course and have them come and help facilitate this, to get them working with a different population, to kind of learn more about leadership and facilitate that, and also provide one thing that I think worked really well is having not peer, because they're older, but they're not old like us, they're younger, and so there was a really nice kind of relationship there that I saw with my graduate students and facilitating. So it actually, beyond working with those students, was a nice way to present a challenging, different, engaging type of activity to graduate students to practice their leadership and programming skills. And so there was a really nice reciprocal relationship in that they, I think, gained a lot from it, and so did the students. So that was something that I thought in terms of, we're going to segue into collaboration, but that's a really nice other piece of engagement that we were able to facilitate in that activity. So yeah, it was great.
We had a lot of other data that we collected on
Yeah, we have
recreation,
quant
but
data that we're not presenting
yeah,
today.
we want to spend time with the collaborative effort as well, so we really limited how many slides we provided. So if you want more feedback, obviously we're happy to do it.
And we do have a theoretical framework, in fact, as well, but we
We
don't need to go there today.
Thanks, Anne.
Thank you.
Well,
This is the long-awaited.
That is a lie. I was like the last question, so this was for me an interesting thing in lots of ways, because usually I'm kind of doing physical activity and everything, but I decided I really wanted to know, since we were kind of forced into an interdisciplinary collaboration. Well, we were, really, to get the grant, you know, what does that mean? How does it work? You know, what can we learn from it? And I know there are times when people kept asking me to do other things, and I kept saying, no, I'm going to do this, because I want to find out what this is. But I did go up one time just to see what the program was doing, and went on a hike, which turned into an impromptu lecture a little bit about plants, because the plant person didn't show up, and I happen to know a lot of the plants there, so I was able to do that. But that was a lot of fun for me, too, because they had to climb a long hill, and we had to drag a couple of kids, you know, get them up to the top and take them down. So it was really nice to see the kids and what they were doing, and, you know, kind of the things that we had to do. So anyway, my research question was much more looking at, you know, what are the opportunities and challenges of collaboration, but also how is interdisciplinary knowledge, you know, how does that work, how does it develop? And so I ended up calling this collaboration because I think that's what I really ended up focusing on more so than anything. And so, if you want to go to the next slide, what I did was, as they were going along in their different phases of planning, implementing, and then, you know, afterwards, after they'd done their activity, I would interview them, and I would do it in a variety of ways. I would interview them, I would ask them to respond to questions via email, and interview them face-to-face as well. But I also provided, at intermittent points, feedback, just so they could see what they had said, just to see if that had any influence on their collaboration as well. So I would do, you know, a couple of summaries just to show what was going on from my perspective, anyway. Before they kind of started, I wanted to know where they were coming from in terms of skills that they've had, you know, or experiences they've had in terms of previous collaborations. So this was kind of a summary of what they thought were skills were needed for effective collaboration and successful meetings. And, you know, they're pretty obvious things. You know, I think anybody would probably come up with very similar things, but actually putting them into practice is where the rub hits the road, you know. So I think everybody was on the same page. That was what was nice, is everybody had the same kind of thoughts about what successful collaboration involves. And then the next one. I also asked them what any concerns they had about starting this whole thing, and all of them, you know, these are the major things that they all kind of agreed to, or when I looked at the data, this is what I saw. You know, being very clear about what the goal and mission, and that takes a lot of time and effort. And, you know, everybody said, you know, everybody's coming from a different perspective. Everybody's coming from a different language. Everybody's using language in different ways. That it also takes a lot of time to brainstorm and process. And we had some time constraints because, you know, the event was happening in the summer, but people had a lot of things going on during the semester that were their own research projects in different areas. So there are a lot of time constraints all throughout the whole process. And again, you folks have not really seen this necessarily, but if you disagree with this, you can also say this too. Leadership was a big issue, you know, and I think these are things that need to be spoken about, and everybody said this too, you know, who takes the lead? Is it the PI? Are they all PIs? Who takes the lead in all different segments? What's the struggle behind that, and how is that how does that work out? And then setting limits on what do we actually do and cover, and what do we focus on. You know, we can't do everything. I mean, even as you can see, we've got 4 different little projects going on here, and it was huge. Yeah, I thought it was very huge in terms of a project. And then there was, you know, conversations about what products are we going to get out of this? What do we get out of this process? You know, what are they? There was issues related to tenure. You know, some people were senior faculty, some people were not. You know, some people were on a tenure track. I mean, there's all sorts of those related concerns, and those are very, you know, important. And then timing and tasks, much more than managerial stuff. You know, what each person's going to do, when they're going to do it, you know, how they're going to meet that deadline, how responsible are they going to be to get there. So the concerns, I think, were really helpful in terms of, you know, making sure, you know, and that summary was sent out to people, so I think people were concerned about those issues, and I think they were kind of dealt with as they went along.
I would just add that I came to the project late. I was asked onto the project because people had other things going on during the summer.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I'm actually in town, so I can help with, you know, trying to coordinate the research component, the evaluative component. But that was challenging because I was trying to guess what would Helen want, what would Anne want, what would Susan want, try to come up with a draft, give it back to them, having no idea was I even on the right track or not. Did I have enough turnaround time to get it in time for the program so that we could implement? So, I mean, it was like pre-planning, but it was like pre-planning like a couple weeks before.
Yeah.
I was thinking days before,
Yeah.
actually.
And I think that's
It was
important.
tight. It was a tight timeline.
Because
is what I
part of the
remember.
collaborative effort, and I'm not sure if this was due to the nature of the collaboration, but there was someone who pulled off. You know, so I mean, I don't know if that's documented in that, but that could just show you how difficult collaboration
challenge.
can be, because we
Yeah, and
we lost
I'm glad you brought that, because we did. We
Yeah,
lost
it
one
was
person,
tough.
we had to bring somebody else in, which
Yeah.
also changed how the collaboration works.
So I think it's probably actually
Yeah, I
quite
did it
common
differently than I
in
thought.
collaboration,
It is very common.
because it's they're
Yeah.
long projects, so it's probably normal.
Yeah, and it's hard to do, and and I think we did, as I said to Susan, and in the kitchen today, for lack of better words, I'm not going to mince anything. It's because we're all very good that we could do this in this short time. But if we did it again, I'm sure, you know, we would know that we got the grant. Let's say in January, we had 6 months to try to get something together and then implement, and that's not enough time. Really, with very, very highly active, busy people, you know, a lot of what I've read since about interdisciplinary structures and conversation, just having the conversation of getting all the same language is a year to 2 years sometimes of just trying to make sure that what we wanted or what we were saying, we understood what we were saying. And I will have to commend Julie that she literally came on in about probably 3 weeks, had to get in all of our heads. She is a very good interpreter. She can read your mind like you wouldn't believe. I mean, it's a huge task. And sometimes I wasn't even sure what I was thinking. So seriously.
Julie just told you, like,
Yeah, I just
this is
said,
what you're thinking.
and this is what you
Fine, that's great. I'm way better at that.
And I would add here also that, you know, as an outsider looking in on this, you know, these people didn't know each other, you know, and I knew Ellen, I knew Anne, I knew them, but they did not know each other. And I think that's another issue in terms of you need time to develop that. You can't just jump into something like that. And I think that's a really important piece.
And that's, I think, one of the problems that we get when we go to big funding or other funding is that a lot of times you need to pull in this, you need to pull, and so you just find and you start grabbing, and in a way it's sort of backwards. You almost need to develop that group, then go for funding, find something that suits you, but that usually isn't how that happens.
You know, it's interesting, there's a grant that that we're looking at applying for with my collaborator in Australia, and in order to get it, you have to show previous evidence of collaboration.
Oh.
And so, like, we're
good.
doing a book chapter together, so we can show that for the grant. It's to promote external, like overseas or external collaborations. But I thought actually that's quite a good, because that's showing them that you have worked together, you know how to work together. It doesn't have to be a big.
You're not just trying to put the people in places to
Yeah.
satisfy the grant.
Yeah.
You know, that's because that collaboration is huge. And I think, you know, I would trust all these guys today. I wasn't positive the very first day, you know, when we started, to be honest with you, and it came, but I knew they were good. I knew they were good. And so, you know, because of that, I knew that that was gonna, that it would come across. But I think that now, if we were to do it again, we have much better understanding of each other's lifestyles and communication styles and so forth. That would even make it better. But it is hard to do as just something to impose than to actually nurture.
So at one point, I kind of defined what, from some of the research of, what these definitions were. And I asked each member to think about where they were in terms of, did they have any, multidisciplinary approach in what they were doing? Did they feel they were doing that? Did they feel like they were really working jointly together, but still kind of more interdisciplinary? Or was there really the transformation kind of happening? And I think they were really somewhere between multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary, depending on what the activity was. I think people would put it there. And so I don't think there was time to build transdisciplinary. I think there was not enough time to sit down and really look at what the content was doing. I think Helen got close to perhaps what STEM was doing. I'm not sure how much you folks did to that and health. So that transformation, I just don't think there was time enough to develop that. So, and I think that came out from what everybody said.
And I think the time part's really important, because I went to Cornwall times and Ann and I just talked, and you just tell me what you're doing, and I think that time, building in time for meetings or even a 2-day retreat. I'm a processor. I have to do that. I can't. That's the way my brain works. But that's how I was able. I couldn't have. Not that I did a great job with it, but I couldn't have done it at all if I hadn't spent time with her and saying, "Tell me about the watershed. Tell me how this works, so I can understand it."
And I thought this was a good quote, and I think we've just kind of been saying that in the last, that you really, you've got great experts and individuals, you can count on everybody, but really the main thing is building the team and the trust. And again, that takes time before you even start your project. I also asked them to rate themselves a number of times, and this was one of the times I asked them to rate themselves about barriers, because very common barriers in collaboration are issues related to time, to trust, and to turf issues. I don't remember this one. Yeah. And so, it was really obvious to me that there was really no turf issues. Nobody thought they were stepping on each other's toes in terms of the research or products or anything. I never got any kind of sense of that. In terms of trust factors, I think everybody didn't have any issues with trust. I think they did mention sometimes they had trust, but I think it was some issues with that. But I think that was meeting deadlines in the time frame. That was, they were hoping somebody would do it, but they weren't sure because, they would have these kind of conversations. And then time, you could see that was the biggest barrier, is just having time to talk with each other, to plan with each other, to get the job done. And I think, so time for me is a really big issue. And these are just quotes to kind of emphasize this. So I would say each person was stressed about the project.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Really. It was a very stressful process. And I think a lot of it had to do with it. I think that I think the time constraints and sometimes not having enough time to really define clearly what everybody is doing, you know, it was hard for them. So it was a very stressful process. More stressful than it would be if you had your own project.
Oh, yeah.
So it came out very strongly. You know, this is another one. I think it's a great quote because it says a lot of things. You know, it says, you know, that it talks about the respect they had of each other, which they showed through. It also showed that, you know, they all felt that each other could do the work, which is, I think, is a huge strength. You know, because you know, I've been in collaboration situations where it's like, what is this person doing on here? We'll never get this done. You know, and then how do you deal with that? And then, you know, and so you can't work with that kind of person, but that doesn't always happen, you know. You can't let them go. So that was, I think that was a positive, even though times the nightmare. There are definitions of collaboration, and it's built along a continuum. And so again, I asked them to talk about that, and I think these kind of results are mostly a result of different phases that they were in. You know, that I felt like at some points they were, you know, just networking with each other. At other points they were just coordinating by themselves. I think at some point some of them were really cooperating together. And some had some really true collaborations, but never where it was totally integrated did they get that far. And I think that's just the nature of the process, that I think if they did a project again, they'd probably get it to integration format. And I have a definition of all those different definitions, but they are quite distinct. Is that mic for somebody? No? Okay. So here's some more quotes that kind of support that. So, you know, one of the things that I think was also happening is, as a result of me asking them about collaboration, was they also learned a little bit more about collaboration. Not that they didn't know about collaboration, but I thought we started to think about what was really going on. And, you know, my recommendation for any kind of collaboration project is actually to build that in, where there are times of reflection and times of really understanding what's going on in this collaboration process.
And understanding that sort of continuum of it. And that was, I mean, I collaborated always, but I didn't know interdisciplinary trends. I mean, I've never thought about what makes it one or the other, so that was really helpful.
But I also think having Grace do that helped to dissipate a lot of the frustration. Let us let us vent and offload it so we could move forward. Because sometimes that can get in the way of moving forward. We were able to offload it, move forward. You know, and that reflection was huge to understand, in some ways, it's kind of normal. And it's, you know, it's okay. It's not a disaster. It's not, you know,
and recognize, I think it is.
Yeah, I recognize it and move forward. And I think that was huge. And, you know, I would say that other projects that do this should probably have like some sort of neutral facilitator, not just a facilitator, because she really didn't facilitate. But she was that person on the kind of the psychiatrist, you know. But seriously, to be able to help us process through, because I think, you know, there were times I'm sure we all were, oh my God, what is going on? Are we going to be able to do this? I've got better things to do with my time. I can't do this. Where are we going? And having Grace kind of.
And I didn't offer any solutions. I just listened and said, and, you know, paraphrased and just said, okay, well, I'll document that. And then it was like you already made a decision by the time I finished or something.
That must have been hard for you, though, because you're so used to
doing. So used to doing. Are you kidding? I'll never do this again.
I'm used to being in charge.
You were so good. No, seriously.
Okay, next
There were
one.
sometimes I was like, I can't believe I just told her all that. Or it's settled.
And you know, I think you can tell some people who are here who did some of these, but and these again, you know, you can see that sometimes they work together, sometimes they worked parallel, sometimes they really cooperated, and it's I know you want to get to that integration point, but actually I think it's always going in and out like that. I think it has to.
Yeah, I do too, Grace. I even though in the earlier slide, it's almost thinking about it, it's hierarchical,
Right.
you know.
They said
On
it
the other
continually.
hand, I think when you're talking about a project, each is appropriate in a given time and place.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and you need it all.
Yeah.
But
And I think it's
yeah,
But it's not-
okay, yes.
You know, yeah, it's
Yeah.
not each step. You might go one step and then maybe go another step. I mean, it's not at all in one way.
But if you read some of the literature on that, they present it as a continuum.
Do they?
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
You know, findings, you know, I think we've mentioned some of these. You know, everybody thought the students really benefited from the project. Everybody had this, you know, really ultra respect for each other's expertise and professionalism. Everybody thought it was stressful. Time was a major constraint. There was, you know, some conversation about disconnect with Marcy, and that's not meant in a way that, you know, they couldn't be there all the time. They all wanted to be there. And so, you know, they were very thankful Marcy was there consistently, to, you know, and the extension people to do the project. But I think everybody in their own way said to me, you know, I wish I was there all the time to see the whole thing through, or I don't know what's happening over here, and we didn't have time to get the feedback so that we'd know if we're doing the right thing for the next thing. So did you get a sense of that, Marcy, too?
Yeah, I did. There was some of that, and some comments made to me that were the same way, and we just tried to work through that. So.
Yeah. And then, you know, was collaboration truly achieved? I'm not sure it was truly achieved. I think we were getting there, but I also think a clearer understanding of the process of collaboration was achieved, I would say. And that kind of leads into the next slides. Those are just quotes to support those. I think this is an interesting quote, the second sentence. You know, true collaboration means everyone puts their stuff, plans, agenda, etc. on the table and only takes about what is needed. Then I don't think that happened, you know. So it's a different way of thinking about it. And I like this second quote because it really talks about that, going back and forth from, you know, being coordinator to collaborator to cooperator to, you know, do my own thing. You know, it was, I think it was very true.
Flexibility is a huge thing.
And then this is the quote that, you know, I think speaks to what I was saying, Marcy, in terms of, you know, that they wish they were there, really, all the time. I think every PI really felt that the people on the ground, you know, Marcy and her team, you know, were really helpful, enthusiastic, and just made it. And then this kind of lends itself into thinking about collaboration in the future. I think there, you know, are some issues also that relate to mentoring within collaboration. I thought that was an interesting point. And then this intentionality of collaboration, you know, And I thought this is an interesting quote in all sorts of ways too, because, you know, people are doing their own research, and this was not their primary research. You know, I mean, we all have our own research specializations, and so this was different. So how do you believe in it or value it was another thing that was starting to arise out of conversations. Is I felt like people were saying, you know, how important is this kind of work to me?
But it's interesting, I think, seeing the presentation, now I realize how valuable it is and how the pieces interrelated with each other. You know, and if there's some opportunity at some time to write it up or move it forward, I think it could be really, really a strong piece. You know, even more powerful than, I think it was powerful, and I know it, kids talk about it stuff. It was very impactful to kids from both, you know, STEM, recreation, and healthy lifestyles. Piece, but it can even, you know, I see it just could be getting even better.
So the question would be, how impactful was it to you? Which is, you know, kind of this last piece, which is, I wanted to ask them, you know, that my asking them questions through this whole process about collaboration, you know, did that have kind of any impact on their thoughts about collaboration? And we've talked about these things a little bit now, that, you know, it crystallized things, it helped them, you know, tease things out a little bit more. It made them be more intentional, and I think those are useful pieces. I put this quote at the end just because I do think it's an issue for the College of Ed to think about. You know, is do you do something from a natural point of view, or do you do something that forces people together? And you know, even with Ann saying right now, looking at all the pieces, you know, maybe you'd have to wait another 20 years before you get to that statement if it wasn't forced on you. I don't know.
Oh, there's more?
No.
Okay. So first of all, let me explain that last question. Okay. So I'm just paying attention to the time because we have a candidate here that I'm on the search committee. Okay. But I genuinely could have enjoyed a full day of this. And I mean that. I mean, I had so many probing questions about your efforts, as well as thinking about next year, Grace, and Ann, who's on the GRPC, about thinking how we can reconceptualize some of these RFPs in ways that address some of the issues that were raised. It's not clear to me yet. That's why I'd like to really. So I wonder if we might schedule a time again where we just have a dialogue about some of these things. Because, I mean, just a couple of the questions that emerged in the last 10 minutes, I mean, I think a 2-hour conversation needs to transpire almost regarding it, you know, and I think also, Grace, it's in some cases, you know, it's a bit swimming against the current, you know, in that one of the candidates we have here today is a Virginia Tech graduate. Some of you know I'm alum from Virginia Tech, and so, you know, for 3 years my doctoral education was paid for because I worked on a collaborative grant, you know, and a lot of people only work with a given professor or something, and so collaboration is so much more complex. And this is largely within members of the same college, even, you know, and it's and yet the 21st century literature, you know, and what have you, is so clear that we've got to address this better. And the universities that are thriving are the ones that are doing this the best, generally speaking, I think, you know. So wow, I was so enjoyed the STEM dimensions as well as the healthy, active lifestyle dimensions. There's just, it's rich. So I guess the question I would pose to you is, one, I would be so interested in longitudinal data. Going back, seeing if those kids, for example, are eating better and getting more exercise, having a more healthy, active lifestyle. You know, whether or not their interest in school have changed any based upon this experience. And I also, Helen, you know, I wonder about, it's so interesting to know about food access and what have you, and whether or not that will also shift parental decisions, you know, family decisions, what's access. And when we went to the meeting on your award, you know, I was real attentive to, it was the healthiest food I've ever seen presented at a casino.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, and no sugary drinks. I mean, I think it was a real, I think it was a real intentional decision to have that lunch healthy. You know, I've never seen a healthy lunch at a casino like that, you know. Not that I go there very often, but for a few other meetings, you know. So anyway, Michael Croth is chair of the GRPC, and I think Michael.
Can you get us back with this? Because right now it's. Oh, I know, because it's faced up, so we have to push that little thing down. Can we
Oh,
push
right.
it down?
Can you just push the camera down so we can
This?
see this? Yeah.
Yeah, just,
Thank you.
There we go. Okay.
it's on high zoom.
Now it's on.
Is that better?
Yeah, I think.
Is that too low?
I think
Really?
Well, all right, and then maybe zoom back.
Yeah.
Nice.
There you go.
Okay, there you go.
I was gonna say, Jim, that
Yeah.
I wish that we had collected collaborative data on our grant for the other COE grant that we had. Because,
Yes, you presented.
I mean,
that.
anecdotally in my head, I collected data, but I'm saying, you know, I wish that we had done that because there's a lot of similar, I think, findings from that collaboration. I would say a lot of the similar
Yes.
types of.
Yes.
So, you know, I think one of the issues perhaps that makes it more difficult is that what was identified as the time issue. You know, because we're in the same boat, you know, we're collaborating with people from CNI and down in McCall and by distance and then all these things. And, you know, really I concluded in the same project is that the trust building initially and understanding people's perspectives and getting to trust the people's intentions and getting to trust that people do work or how they do work and all these sorts of things really do need to kind of happen beforehand. And in a one-year grant, it's very hard to do that. So I think that's the biggest limitation. I mean, I think it's a great initiative. I just think that was probably the number one thing that I see as being a limiter. So I don't know if you have like focus groups beforehand.
But don't you think that that's something that our doctoral students, you know, like we're talking in our HAL PhD program, that, you know, we need to have time that people actually work together across disciplines, not just in our own disciplines, so that they learn all those kind of things. And I think unless we intentionally do that in our doctoral programs, those students will not learn those skills. They'll have to do it once they leave and, you know, and be one step behind, I think, myself.
You know, I see what's happening on a federal level. They're just saying you must build 10% of your grant must be evaluation. Or you must, I mean, they're just saying, or we strongly encourage you. So they're just framing it that we have to have impacts, we have to measure it, we need to see results. So this is how you do it. But I could see doing something like this, saying you really need to set some costs for collaboration because, you know, it was like, God, you had the expense of going to Coeur d'Alene, which was, you know, for some of it's costly to drive up and back. And then could we just have spent a day and had a meal? Or I just think there's some upfront costs that are worth it. There's payback in the long run, and it's not fluff. I think sometimes they'll meet, greet, be with each other, get viewed as that, but it's not. And then particularly, you know, with a community like the tribe, it's all about relationships. That's how. I mean, I've learned working with Indians a lot, and just being in Coeur d'Alene now, I'm going, oh my gosh, I stepped in it again, and I know better. I mean. But you're being so careful. But you're careful, and you just go, oh, because, and almost always it's I went too fast. I mean, I kind of go fast anyway, but it's like I went too fast. You you know, and so what I had to do with lacrosse is saying, they didn't like that idea I put in the proposal. We need to go this way. And Dale saying, all right. And unfortunately, they say,
That is the nature, I think, of community work.
right.
And there is huge, I think Marcy, I see her shaking her head. We have been, you know, just as we think we're moving forward, it's okay, take a little step back. And it's nothing big. And what I think is the best thing is that they're still willing to talk to us. But there is a lot that goes into it, from a historical as well as a philosophical understanding that we can't know. But you have to build that relationship, and it is face to face. And you can build that, and it will help a little bit. It won't mitigate, or it won't take care of all the problems, but it'll at least give you a little bit of, okay, we understand, you don't really understand, but here's the way, you know, it goes. But it's...
Well, I think this, as a positive outcome, I think this has actually helped me in my SEED grant project that I did this summer, because a lot of the issues of trust and collaboration and building are because of working with an Indigenous population. It's all that same issue. So in a way, this has really helped with, even though it's not as large a group, but there's all these networks, and it was really helpful too when I went to this conference in February down there, and there was people presenting on Indigenous research with communities, and they're saying to me in networks, and they're like, these relationships are forever. Like, you will establish these relationships, and they will be forever. And so this project, along with that, I think has helped me, in my other projects and these scary projects that I'm going into. So I think it is, that's a nice kind of intangible outcome though for researchers themselves. We'll see. That helps me.
But I think that is a difference between people who have not done many collaborations and people who have in their own different areas. And so I think for like the novice professor who's trying to seek tenure, should you be in a collaborative project? I don't know.
Good point.
Yeah.
We'll find out.
Really.
So it's more labor intensive.
Mm-hmm.
I think the potential returns could be greater.
Oh.
But when you're on a time clock, you need to certainly factor that in.
Or we need a different metric. I mean,
Well,
we need
yeah.
to think about what we value, because if what we're looking at is,
Good point.
if our work is about making lasting and good and sustainable change in the world and communities, I just would wonder about our metrics. So.
Well, but that's the problem. Whether we talk about it, the metrics are kind of almost out of our hands at this point,
Well,
right?
they might be out of our hands, but I feel like there needs to be
Yeah.
some more unified voice for what.
But I think, one of the things I know for me, that now tenure is only a day past me, I do feel more comfortable now that I can really sink my teeth into being sure to do what I want. That's my passion. And I feel...
If it takes longer, so be it.
Yes, yeah. I won't feel like,
Yeah.
this writing time, this is, that I will be able to do that, run up to the drive, or do some of that and not feel the stress of,
But I think those are the skills that our doctoral students should be getting.
So
yeah, I do too. I think you're right, because as they go into tenure track positions, that's something that is important, I think, to lay out there, because it's so hard to figure out what it is you're supposed to do.
So Michael Croth,
Yes, sir.
we're approaching the conclusion of this, and so because you're the chair of GRPC, I know that you have some profound words of wisdom or a question that you'd like to pose to the group. Michael.
Yeah, I'm profound. Where are we going to go get a drink? That's my question.
No, of water. Of water.
Seriously, yeah, water. Of healthy water.
Yeah.
So seriously, they'll probably cut me off here from our video here in a second.
Yeah.
But I thought, number one, it was a great presentation, very interesting, and I'm glad we recorded it because we'll have the opportunity to share it with other people. Number two, we started alluding to some things here, but there's a lot of things to think about in terms of us as a college and being a learning organization and being able to transfer these skills from project to project to project. Another thing, I mean, I've got several thoughts about all this, one of which has to do with signature projects.